Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to my channel for the fantasy adventure read-along of A Book of Creation by Gregory James Gardner Jr. That's me. Now, if you're new to this channel, I spent 20 years writing this book. I started it out of high school and I finished it just like 3 years ago. So I would really appreciate it if you gave me some of your time and went and checked out chapter 1 before you got to this part. Moving on for the rest of everybody who's caught up. Chapter 18. The Planet of Nocturne. The year is 1065 by the nocturnal calendar, Beta. Ganon slithered across the rim as fast as he could while Talia made herself a sling from some of her scrapped and tattered furs. Most of the pathway remained clear, but as the brush thickened, she used her Aztec abilities to clear the path ahead of them and closed it up behind them as well. Every now and then, an old stubborn tree or rock would stay its place, and Ganon would have to dodge quickly enough that Talia's arm would shoot in pain from being jostled. For hours, they made their way along in mostly silence. What they had just been through seemed more appropriate a subject to reflect upon rather than talk about. The two of them had barely managed to make it out of the Pharos with their lives, and Talia seemed the worse for wear with a shattered wrist and exhausted from all the jumping. Still, the Aztec dug deep and found the energy and sheer willpower to keep going forward. "We will reach Kurol before nightfall," Ganon said at long last. "There is much you still need to know about Darkstar, Talia. If you truly wish to be its next pilot, then you must understand the weight of the burden you're about to take upon yourself." "What kind of burden?" "Darkstar is capable of great devastation," he paused, "and nothing else." "Devastation is a strong word." "An appropriate one," he said. "On my world, it is called Star Armor. Only 2 suits of the like were created. Once they were fully operational, everyone who worked on their design and construction was sent to the halls of exile to keep their secrets safe. The 2 suits were, at first, meant to work in tandem, but certain advancements were made to one suit that could not be made to mine, as there was one fundamental difference between the two. Mine could create energy from matter. The other could create matter from energy." "Once more," she said, "I have only understood about half of what you said." "One armor creates, and one armor destroys. We once worked together. I gathered the energy needed, and Lexia used the energy to create." "Lexia?" "She was the pilot of the other armor. It was called the Cloud. After the advancements, she no longer needed Darkstar to supply her energy needs, and her suit was renamed the Great. Thus, the Institute broke us up and used us as they pleased." "The Institute?" "That is a whole other story. As I was saying, Darkstar takes matter and turns it into energy, and that is where its destructive powers lay. The armor will maintain its energy level at all times by taking ambient energy from the surrounding environment, and little else will happen. But that can be dangerous if the suit is damaged. Should that happen, then anything you have not set Darkstar to befriend will become nothing more than energy for the armor. Anything. And just how much the armor takes in is dependent solely on how drained Darkstar has become." "You're losing me again." "I could think of no other way to explain these things, Talia. Please, just take heed of my words and trust that when the time comes, they will make sense to you." "Is there anything else?" "Much more. It is important, very important, that you maintain conscious control of the armor." "Stay awake?" "In a sense, yes. Should you mentally waver, then Darkstar's intelligence will take over until you recover, and when Darkstar is in control, Talia, anything within its reach is in danger of being eaten. In a word." "So, why were the armors created?" "To create planets." "To create what?" The stony ridge dipped low as the rims of Muru Aga, Viaga, and Mara Aga merged together to form the northern, shallower rim of the crown. Still, the cliffs climbed high over the evergreen sea that stretched out far and wide across the northern lands. Golden light bathed the expanse in an effulgent glow, broken in patches by the highland clouds that sat cradled on the horizon and diffused in swaths by the lowland haze. Ganon stopped as they reached an overlook along the path, and Talia stepped down to stretch her legs. "Look," Ganon motioned to the north, then to the south. "All that you see of this world," he gazed out at the evergreen sea. "This is a planet." Taya looked out at the vista and put it all into perspective. You created planets? Alone, no, he answered somberly. Together, Darkstar and the Cloud could create them. Separately, Darkstar can only destroy them, but that is the extreme of things. Taya looked at the wary serpent. You want to rest for a bit? If I am right, we have until the autumn's first glow tomorrow to make it back to Heliodum. The two of them looked off to the far, dark horizon of the south, to where they could see the glow of Alea Autumn lighting the clouds at their brightest noon hour. Ganon continued, Another 4 hours east and we should begin to see the light of Izael, along with the Herzog Karol. West of the peak there is a path we can take down into the crater. He went gravely silent for a moment. Come. He gently took up Talia with his unseen limbs and set her back on his shoulders as she yelped. We've been idle too long. Again they sped off along the rim. Sure enough, in just about 4 hours' time, the Herzog Karol stood in the distance, its silhouette propped against the cloudy skies of Dylor, backlit by the waning light of Izael. Another 2 hours found them at the western pass into the crater, and Ganon's speed faded by the mile. Even though they made their way downhill, he had begun to slip with fatigue. A 5-petaled purple flower rushed by in the foliage and made Talia yell, Ganon, stop! I have seen something that will help us! Talia did not wait for him to stop, and she jumped down with a wince, and as Ganon slowed, she trotted back some distance to pick the flower. Ganon circled back around and made his way to her as she sat cross-legged on the ground. Using her free hand, she gathered the dirt in front of her into a small mound, and she placed the purple flower on top of it. She made some small gestures in the air just above it as she concentrated with an open-eyed, whispered prayer. Ganon peered closely at the mound as he noticed the flower turn white in the center, then start to dissolve and bubble in steam. A depression took form in the center of the mound as the dirt dissolved also into a sweet and earthy-smelling liquid. Quickly, she scrambled onto her knees and leaned in. Sip from it, but do not swallow. Talia sipped, then she swished the liquid in her mouth and spit it out in an odd direction. She repeated the process while she waved with some urgency for Ganon to come do the same. The serpent did so, and in just the same fashion, sip, swish, spit, repeat. After less than a minute, the mound had completely dissolved away, and the two of them sat back on their haunches, lightheaded and slightly euphoric. Ganon looked around, and then looked at Talia as things seemed to brighten up with an enjoyable glow. Talia? He asked with a growing smile in his voice. Ganon? The infectious smile coated everything surrounding her mouth as well. What did we just do? Steps of thought ascended before him. It's called Mother's Serum. What's happening? His eyes widened as his thoughts stepped upward onto the staircase of illumination. Talia took a breath and looked up. We're going someplace for a few minutes while Mother takes care of our bodies, she said in a long, breathy exhale. Ganon looked up, too. We're going to be. Exactly. With a small laugh, she watched a puffy cloud tumble across the sky. What happens if you swallow it? He slowly lay back. You see things. She closed her eyes and swayed like a flower in the glades of a newly felt breeze. And a few minutes turned into a few days. I think I swallowed some. The illumination faded away as his surroundings came into focus. Upside down as he lay on his back, his limbs felt warm as if they floated in place, and he moved his head to look along the length of his body. Again, his eyes grew wide. Oh, we both would know if you swallowed some. Talia? Yes? I can see my hands, he whispered in astonishment. Talia looked down from the sky at Ganon. Then she blinked as she tilted her head to the side. A few more hard blinks cleared her vision. I think I may have swallowed some too. Talia stood and motioned for Ganon to do the same. Stretch, breathe deep. It will clear your head of the visions. But you're still going to feel strange for a while. And by the way, she removed her wrist from the makeshift sling, rubbed it, and rolled it around to stretch it out. Satisfied with herself, with a smile, she pointed down to Ganon's tail. The serpent painlessly raised his tail to inspect it and found no trace of any wound. I thought you said there were no Aztec powers that could heal us. I said I could not do it there, and it's not an ability to be used lightly. It is more like asking a favor of Mother, and I will not be able to call on her again in that manner for a long time, so she punched him in the shoulder only because she could see it. Once again, you're welcome. Thank you, Talia. I feel great. He picked her up and slung her on his back while she squealed with surprise. Ganon had not felt the grace of youth for ages, and he enjoyed every minute while he could as he sped down the crater. Even his sight seemed keen, as he could take in his surroundings with ease while the land darkened around them. His reflexes in dodging stubborn obstacles had improved greatly as well. The smell of the alpine woods and the flowers, and all the things they rushed past, filled his lungs and heart anew with joy for life that he had thought he had lost. Before he knew it, they had entered the forest below the Herzog Corral, and Darkstar sat in front of them some distance away, a silent behemoth hidden beneath the years of overgrowth. Stay here. Do not approach until I say it is safe. Understood? Talia nodded as she eyed the massive heap. Ganon, confident Talia surely understood, turned and made his way toward the tangled mess of plants at a slow pace. Twigs and branches cracked and thumped as he entered the shrubbery, and when he came within 3 meters, he stopped. On the ground, in a perfect circle all around the armor, sat a gathered pile of bones, stripped clean, and as he crossed over the boundary, its blue eyes flashed. Sounds that Talia had never heard before whirled and hissed, and mixed with the tearing up ivy and vines as Darkstar came to life. It stood up tall and broad and broke through the branches of the canopy like they did not exist. The sharp report of a thick branch rang out as it snapped, while the rustle of leaves rose in crescendo with the branch as it fell to the ground. Pilot Ganon reporting for service, the serpent loudly barked.
Confirm identification.
A scratchy digital voice clawed at the air. It sounded horrid to Talia as she watched what could have been its ribcage open while several long, rope-like instruments descended from within. They looked more like snakes as they seemed to circle and pass all around Ganon. At the right angle, Talia could see thin red lines of light pass over Ganon's skin.
Pilot identification not found. Confirm identification.
Voice authorization Samula Iki, he said.
Authorization confirmed. Entering safe mode.
Scan the area for biosigns.
Multiple biosigns detected. Caution. One unfriendly, 11 meters northwest.
Negative, Darkstar. Target is friendly. Stand by to initiate level 1 diagnostic probe.
Insufficient power level to charge probe for launch.
Ganon looked around and made his way to a pine tree nearby. Lock onto my position. Designate target Larix Occidentalis and mark for demolition. A green light shot from Darkstar's shoulder to mark the pine tree with an X, and it lit up the air through the mists in the dark of the forest. Talia gawked in wonder. Ganon slithered away from the tree and over to Talia as he ordered Darkstar, begin when ready. Darkstar took a solid stance, and Talia watched as a single, long tendril shot out of its left side, lightning fast with a high-pitched, buzzing whine. When it made contact with the tree, a large scar was gouged out of its surface each time, again and again, over and over, until what remained fell over into the brush, and even then, Darkstar did not stop. Only sawdust littered the forest floor, and that too sucked up into the tendril. Talia inwardly gasped as the thought of what happened to Aaron flashed into her mind.
Probe fuel for launch.
Darkstar said coldly. Target biosign marked as new friendly and launch. An orb of light appeared in front of the armor. It drifted over to Talia and hovered at eye level for a moment before it made its way down to the ground in a solid sweep. When the orb reached the soil, it blipped out of existence, and the dark of the veil returned, save for Talia's own light.
Probe complete. Enter file heading.
File heading, Talia. Save to personal archive.
File saved.
Then it did something that startled the woman.
Talia, why do you carry Ganon's pilot key?
Ganon could see that Talia had been caught off guard and stepped in. Discontinue inquiry. We have a much more pressing matter that needs our attention, and we must be on our way. Remain in safe mode and do not engage unfriendly targets until further ordered.
Orders confirmed. Safe mode. Do not engage.
Talia, hand me the power core. She dug into the lining of her furs, pulled the core out, and handed it over. It is going to take some time to reinstall this, so we should do that at the temple. Do you think you can jump with Darkstar? Ganon asked. Bigger things tend to give me trouble, and I cannot go too far with them, but I have never tried to bring anything so large with me before. Is it safe to go near? Ganon nodded, and the two of them approached as Talia put one hand on Ganon and the other on the armor, then blinked. Nothing happened. She closed her eyes to concentrate and tried again. Still nothing happened. The Azek leaned her weight into Darkstar and gripped Ganon a little more firmly while she dug her feet into the soil. She breathed deep and slipped into a meditation of whispers. Ganon suddenly felt sick. The air became oppressive as a swirl of wind rushed up. Feeling like he had just been ripped out of existence, Ganon saw everything go black. Alright, that's where we're going to end it. That is not the end of this chapter, but this is a really fucking long chapter, pardon my French. Thank you very much for joining me. Don't forget to hit the like button, hit that subscribe if you haven't already. And if you know anybody that likes fantasy stories, fantasy adventures, please share the first chapter of this with them. I would greatly appreciate it. We'll see you guys next time. The stony ridge dropped low as the rims of Maru Aga, the Aga, and Mara Aga merged together to form the northern, shallower rim of the crown. Still, the cliffs climbed high over the evergreen sea that stretched out far and wide across the northern lands. Golden light bathed the expanse in an effulgent glow, broken in patches by the highland clouds that cradled A green light shot from Darkstar's shoulder to mark the pine. A green light shot from Darkstar's shoulder to mark the pine